Hello everyone. So in this case we're going to see how we can create a metal material out of our physical corona material. So let's go into our slate material, and here we have our wooden texture, but we're not going to be using that anymore, so let's just bring in another corona physical material. Now let's select our friend here and right click and assign material to selection. Now, first of all, now that we're going to be creating a metal material, we're going to change the metalness, again, pretty straightforward, to a metal-based material. So in here, we will see the edge color option now available. So what the edge color will be doing is that it's going to basically give some metal color to all the edges. So that's very handy because we can give a little bit more of depth to all of our overall object. So now I can just change its color by going into this color option here, and I can just give it maybe a darker metal color like so. And if I reduce its roughness, which means that I'm going to make this material a little bit more smooth, and therefore all of my reflection levels will come up a little bit higher. So let's just do that, and let's just give this a approximately 0.3. So if I go and open the preview window by right clicking, I see that now my metal is much more shiny. One other thing that we need to keep in mind is that our refraction is no longer available, because in real life metal cannot be refractive. That doesn't exist. So it's very important when we're setting this to metal or non-metal, and you can see how the corona physical material helps us out to create more realistic materials. So I can even change this metal to a more colorful color, let's say a bluish color, like so. So I'm gonna leave it like this. It's pretty nice looking. And also I can keep messing around with this option with the roughness and bump just to make the material a little bit more realistic. So let's see what we have so far. So if we go to our render setup and let's go to our scene tab and start the interactive render. Okay, so obviously it's a little bit too bright, so I can just increase the roughness level. Let me just close this and let's go for 0.75 as we had it before, and maybe let's just try 0.55, and let's just change this blue color, which looks nice, but maybe it's too bright for our sake of the lecture, so let's hit OK. There we go. Okay, now so to avoid this bright reflection going on, I can go ahead and change its edge color, because the edge color, it's basically manipulating these really bright spots here. So actually we're just going to be copying the base color, and you can do this only by right clicking and copy it, just like we could do it in the modifier list on our 3ds Max. And then I'm just going to paste it into my edge color, like so. Now what I want to do with this edge color is for it to be a little bit darker than my actual overall color. So let's go inside, and if I go to maybe just a darker value and hit OK, let's see how this looks now. We should end up with something less brighter. So there we go. Now let's play with the roughness here, and which means that we're going to be playing with the smoothness. So in certain parts of my robot, we're not going to have this smooth surface, but I wanted a rough surface in some spots. So as always for this, we're going to be using some maps. So I got a rough map here and also a normal map, which we're going to be looking at. So let's just bring our rough map to our slate material and also our normal map. And let's just first play with our roughness map. So again, I only have to go to my base rough like so, but remember that we need to add a corona triplanar just so that we can tell this map to wrap itself proportionally in our surfaces here. So let's go ahead and bring in a corona triplanar. Like so, and let's just input our roughness map into this corona triplanar and into our base rough. Now let's right click and open the preview window. Now we can see that the actual map is a little bit too hard on our material. So let's go down here into our base rough map options, and let's tell it that the mixing is way too much. I needed the map just to work at around 50%, like so. So let's go ahead and place this map onto our robot. And remember before that if we open the preview window, that the actual roughness is going to be pronounced by these white or lighter spots here. And obviously it's going to be less pronounced in the grayish to darker spots. So let's keep that in mind. And let's just start an interactive render. And obviously I want to add a region because I want to save my computer memory. Okay, now we can see that an extra detail here can be seen. So let's go into our robot's chest. And there we go. We've added a little bit more of detail there. And we can actually bring this roughness a little bit higher to 0.75 just so that we can bring in some extra detail here. Okay, now I'm just going to close this region just to see everything a little bit better. Okay, now let's go for our normal map. When we have this type of normal map, and let's open the preview window, you can see that it has some gamma into it. So it's a kind of like a bluish tone color, like it's really heavily saturated. So what we need to do in this case is to tell this map that it's going to work with my Corona renderer. So Corona render can't really take this kind of maps. So we have to basically dock, if you will, this map onto our Corona renderer engine. So for this, I'm going to bring in a Corona normal. And this component will help us do this work here. So I'm going to just drag it in like so to the normal input. And what I need to do now is just to set this to add gamma to input. Now I can flip the red and green RGB channels, but let's just see if this needs to be done. So for this, I'm going to just add this bass bump until my bass bump input. So now just to make sure, I'm just going to right click and update my preview here. And now I'm just going to open the preview window. So everything seems to be working in order. So what we really need to see here is that my light is reflecting only from the left side. So if we see the same type of light or some dark spots in the right side, it means that we might need to flip the red channel here. Later on, when we work with other textures, and sometimes that's the case when we bring in textures from Polyhaven. When we get a texture from there, we will be able to crack this problem. But for now, everything seems to be working all right. And you can see that with my bump map, I can see so many more imperfections here in my texture. So let's just disconnect this base bump and you can see how clean it is just with my roughness. But my roughness by itself is giving me some extra nice detail here. But let's just place the base bump and we might need to reduce its bump because I see it's a little bit too much. However, let's just check the render out. So we forgot to add the Corona triplanar to this bump here. So let's just stop our interactive render. And let's grab this Corona triplanar. So shift to copy it, and now I'm just going to insert this input over here and then to my base bump like so. And there we go. Now obviously this is way too much, so we need to lower this bump a bit. So let's go into our Corona physical material and lower the bump value. So let's give it a 0.2. Okay, maybe just a little bit more. Let's go for 0.4 and let's actually add some region to this. Let's get in there maybe a 0.35 like so. And there we go. Alright, so I'm mixing some roughness with the bump, but maybe I want to add a extra roughness here. So let's go all the way to 1. Okay, so by adding some more roughness to 1 here, we could just see the difference because the bump was actually taken over too much. Now, what if I wanted just to add some color to my metal without losing the metal texture? For that, I'm going to use the Corona mix component. So here in my Corona mix, I can mix two different textures. So in order for me to have the same color here, so that I can mix it, and what I mean is that I want to have the same color of my metal, which is this one over here, the color, I need to bring in a Corona color. So this component will let me have the same parameters as my color here. So I'm basically just going to replace this specific parameter here with my Corona color so that I can input it to my Corona mix. So again, if I go into my Corona color, I have this solid color right here. And I want to have the same color as this one. So I'm going to go into my Corona physical material and right click, copy it. And if I go over here, I will just paste it inside of this solid color like so. Now what I want to do is just to add some more color to it, maybe a dirt color so that I can see some dirt going on in the material. So let's bring in a dirt map. Alright, so we can use this one and I'm just going to drag it over here like so. And now I just want to get my metal a little bit dirty. So in here we have the top and bottom. The bottom, it's going to be basically our base layer. So we'll add this color into our bottom for it to add as a base layer again. And now for the top layer, I want it to go up here. Notice that this is mostly white. So what I want to grab is just these darker colors here. And for this, if I go to my Corona mix, you can see that in my mix operation, I'm telling it to add it. So I'm basically adding this white color to my base layer color here. And I don't want that. I just want to get the darker colors, right? So for this, instead of adding, I'm going to multiply. So what multiply will do is just it's going to bring all of the darker colors and just ignore the lighter colors. So keep that in mind. I'm not adding. I actually want to just extract the darker colors from my white map. So I'm going to use the multiply option. So if I go to right click and open my preview window, you can see now that I've added only this dirt into my color. However, I see that it's too pronounced. So what I want to do is just to get rid of these darker colors. I want to make this mixture a little bit softer. So I'm going to go to my Corona mix and here we have the mix amount. So we basically have 1 that equals 100% and 0 will equal 0%. So I just want to add a very soft dirt to it. So I'm going to go for 0.3, which will be at 30%. Let's check the preview window again. And you can see that this is much softer, but maybe it's too soft. Let's try 0.5. Let's go for 50%. Now this component is going to go inside my base color. So let's just right click and open my preview window. And you can see that we start to see these darker spots appear here. So I'm going to start my interactive render. Actually, we forgot to add a triplanar again. So let's grab a triplanar. Okay, so now we need to add just a little bit more of mixture into our color here. So let's go back to our Corona mix and let's just leave this at 1 to see how it looks. Okay, it's a little bit too much there. So I'm going to go for 0.75, so 75%, and there we go. This looks much better now. Okay, so for our final detail, we can add an extra clear coat layer to our robot. So let's go into our Corona physical material and down here in the clear coat layer, let's add a 1 to it. And I'm just going to place a region here so that I save a little bit of memory as always. And now we see that the index of reflection is a little bit too high, so we can lower it with our roughness. So if I increase the roughness, I'm going to just get rid of that smooth surface there. So let's go ahead and type in 0.7 for the moment and see how that works. That was too much. Let's try 0.3. All right, maybe that's a little bit too much. 0.5 can do the trick there. So let's unselect the region and actually let's go for 0.7 because I see that this left side is getting too much light, too much reflectiveness from my exterior light there. So let's go for 0.6 and something around there could do the trick. There we go. Okay, so let's just see the difference. So if I go for a 0 amount of layer, you can see that I lose some of the reflectiveness. That gives a little bit more realism to my object here. So let's go for a amount of 1, and there we go. Actually 0.8. I still don't like so much reflectiveness going on there, and I think this looks really, really nice. And I could actually just try and add a roughness to this. So if I go ahead and pick the same roughness, bring it to my amount and also to my roughness as we did before, let's go for a 0.5 in roughness so that we can see what kind of results we can come up with. Alright, I like this a little bit better. Now it's not acting the whole object, it's actually giving some depth to some of the parts from our robot here. So you see that we've ended up with a slightly more complicated material than our wooden texture down here. Most of it because we are using the Corona mix and this Corona normal, which is different from the one that we use down here. Now most of the Corona normal maps will come with this bluish tone that we have to input a gamma for the Corona renderer to adjust itself to it. Okay everyone, so that's it for this lecture. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'll see you in the next one.